In this episode of Forgotten Buildings, we are heading inside this former electronics factory. With its impressive history and its massive terrain, this truly was one of those incredible industrial ruins. Join us on this adventure with a rather unexpected end.
Hallo!
We will begin our adventure on the outskirts of the terrain. Due that the compound was located in the middle of a city, we were unsure of the security situation. But we decided that being stealthy was our best option. With this plan we also wanted to get into a building as fast as possible.
Ja, gewoon via dat laddertje en dan zo. Daar is het raam gewoon kapot. Dus.
Finally, we were in. We immediately noticed that this building was already trashed and filled with graffiti. Nevertheless, let's continue exploring. We were most excited about the old production halls downstairs in this building. In this part we were once again greeted by trash. But also a pretty cool glass entrance. With the overgrowth, it truly gave off a post-apocalyptic atmosphere. Behind the cool entrance, the real production halls began appearing. And it was massive. A bit further in the hall, we also came across our first real machinery. This production line here was for the production of small microchips, which were used in all kinds of machines. This used to be done on a very precise scale, with multiple employees checking it constantly. Nowadays, these products are all scattered over the production line. Why it still is in a fairly good condition can be declared by the fact that this line closed relatively recently. This was also the last product made on this former production site. But we will head into the history further in the video. But it's time to leave this building. We wanted to see the other buildings, which were abandoned for a much longer time. This probably meant a lot more decay. But first we needed to make our way outside and safely get into the next building.
Oh.
To give you an impression of just how large this terrain was, here you have just an example. We just came out of this building, by the way. We still felt a bit uneasy on the terrain, so we decided to once again just try the first building we came across. Which seemed to be not that hard.
Thanks, just. No problem, okay.
But okay, while we enter, let me tell you the history of this old complex. For this, let's head back in time to 1946. Holland was just freed from German occupation, which meant the reconstruction of Holland has begun. For big electronic makers somewhere in the south of Holland, this also was a good moment to enlarge the production. For this they expanded out of their original site for the first time. To this location right here. When it was opened at the beginning of the 50s, the production of TV housings and all the parts were started. And times were really booming for this area, but especially for the employees. In the first years, the employees which worked here was above the 1000. With this large amount and the strong worker unions, this quickly transformed from just a place where you go to work to just a complete lifestyle for the whole region. These positive times of production booming and the strong labor unions were halted around the end of the 70s. At this time the rise of the Asian manufacturers began to appear, which meant a slow disintegration of this way of manufacturing.
Goedenavond, het nieuws van dinsdag 4 september. Gedwongen ontslagen bij de Nederlandse chipfabrieken van moeten 1200 banen weg.
In 1990 a massive new restructure took place to save the then dying company. What this plan meant was moving all the facilities to countries with lower wages. This was also the fate for this complex. Every year, more jobs seemed to just disappear. In 2004, just one division was still operating, which was also finally closed. This made this historical terrain abandoned. Nowadays, after 16 years of abandonment, nature has truly took its toll. The vegetation everywhere had truly made it into a post-apocalyptic landscape. Nevertheless, let's head into the next building.
Voor dit hier, kijk.
The following place was the first building which really became abandoned. So we had quite high hopes for this part of the complex. Decay was noticeably a lot more severe and gave off a really 80s modernism vibe. What also was a positive is that vandalism was relatively mild. In the first room we also came across our first real items. This hall was some sort of testing hall or lab. There were even some old school machinery left behind, which were now rusting away due to the leaking roof. The function of these machines are unknown to me, but if you have an idea, please leave it down into the comments below. But okay, let's continue on in this retro factory. The long hallway ended into a big central hall, which looked like some sort of a warehouse. Whatever it was, it had quite nice, natural lighting, which was nice to see. So we had finished our main highlight of this big industrial compound. We only forgot one thing, and that was the office wings of this building. Personally, I quite like offices. This is because most of the time a lot of stuff is left behind.
Wow.
When upstairs we immediately noticed the rather musty smell. Most of the office spaces weren't that special at all, unfortunately. Just when we kinda lost hope to find some cool stuff, we found a room with some cool artifacts. And it was completely from a different time. Nevertheless, let's check out another building. Like I explained in the history section, there was a quite big community center for the employees. So let's take a look at that building. Once again, the entrance of this building wasn't that hard, and within a couple of seconds we were standing in the former event hall. The main functions of this former hall was to keep meetings and to have lunch. Behind the main hall, a kitchen/canteen was located. Unfortunately, it was all relatively empty. So let's quickly head over to the next building. The following building was pretty unknown to us. The only thing we knew about this building was that this was the building with the main offices.
Okay.
Inside we were a bit stunned, just how big this hall was. It really was a massive open space, which lets you experience just how massive the manufacturing process was in its heyday.
Weet je hoe asbest werkt?
Wij zijn een bus.
Serieus?
Unfortunately, we were disturbed by a van which was patrolling around the building. We didn't really know who this was, but we decided to be more cautious and head into the office blocks.
Wat? Oké.
While proceeding through the many hallways, we came across this old medical bay.
Wow. Serieus?
Unfortunately, we couldn't go more in depth, due that we spotted a man walking on the terrain.
Oké, kom, loop even die kant op.
A certain right we had now, without being too loud and noticeable, we decided to hide. A couple of seconds later, we saw flashlights shining onto the halls we were just standing.
Hallo.
Hoi.
Gegroet.
Gegroet.
Zet je dat ding even uit?
Ja hoor, tuurlijk. Geen probleem.
Ja? Ook even mee?
Ja hoor, goed.
Alright, they took us to the main entrance, where they started calling the police.
Wie belt u precies?
Wil je te raden?
Ja, ik raad het al.
Ja.
Even voor de zekerheid.
While doing this, they kept insisting that we had to pay a big fine, which made us a bit uneasy, to say the least.
We hebben net twee jonge heren aangetroffen in het voormalig. Ja, daar zou ik ook even de politie bij willen hebben.
A couple of minutes later, we were took outside, where they would wait for the police.
Oké, nou dat is...
Here I unfortunately also stopped filming. So let me briefly tell you what happened next. It turned out that the guards were quite friendly, and in the end they even helped us to leave the property without any fines.